The night air in downtown Atlanta was heavy with the smell of gasoline, fried food drifting from diners, and the faint odor of rain that never quite seemed to fall. Under the flickering yellow street lamp, Jolly sat on a cold stretch of concrete, her back pressed against the wall of a boarded-up store. Her swollen belly rose and fell slowly under her faded dress, each breath a reminder that life was both growing inside her and pressing down, harder every single day. Beside her, her 7-year-old son, Malik, lay curled on a flattened cardboard box, thin arms wrapped around himself as if the world might stop hurting, if only he held on tightly enough. Jolly was only 30, but grief had carved deep lines around her eyes. Just a month ago, she had been a wife. Just a month ago, there had been laughter in the house when her husband, Terrence, came home from his shift at the warehouse, his arms always strong enough to lift Malik high into the air. Just a month ago, she had hope. But then came the accident. One phone call from the hospital had taken her world away. The truck crash had left Terrence lifeless, and with him gone, everything else crumbled. The rent unpaid, the landlord merciless, and the food in the fridge gone within days. Now Jolly and her little boy were part of the invisible crowd. America stepped over every day. They were the faces on the sidewalk that people glanced at only long enough to tighten their grip on their wallets or whisper cruel remarks. "Look at her," someone muttered earlier that evening as they passed, laughter in their throat. "Out here pregnant like that. Don't she know how to keep her legs closed?" Another voice, sharp and mocking. "You begging again? Ain't nobody got spare change for you. Go get a job, girl." They never asked her name. They never asked her story. All they saw was her dark skin, her worn clothes, and the way her hand sometimes trembled as she held it out for coins that rarely came. Jolly had learned to lower her eyes, to hold back the sting of tears. She was used to the names: lazy, welfare queen, dirty. America had built those labels long before she was even born. But what pierced her deepest was Malik's face whenever the insults landed. His wide brown eyes would harden, not with anger, but with confusion. He was only 7, and already he was learning the weight of being black, poor and unwanted. That night, Malik tugged gently at her sleeve. "Mama," he whispered, his voice dry with hunger, "I'm not that hungry." "You can have my piece of bread." Jolly forced a smile and pushed it back toward him. "No, baby, you need it. You're growing." But the truth was that neither of them had eaten more than scraps in 2 days. The pregnancy made her hunger sharper, almost unbearable, but she would never take food from her son's mouth. That was the one thing she could still control: Malik's survival. Cars roared past them, headlights briefly illuminating their small corner of the sidewalk. Every now and then, someone would glance out of a tinted window, see Jolly's dark face and her son's tired frame, and then turn away as if poverty was contagious. The city pulsed with wealth and opportunity all around her. Bright towers of glass, neon lights advertising luxury, restaurants where people threw away more food than she and Malik ate in a week. Yet here she was with nothing. Still, Jolly held her son close, humming a soft tune her mother used to sing to her in Mississippi. It was the only way she knew to keep the night from swallowing them whole. She whispered into Malik's hair, "It won't always be like this. One day things will change." Malik tilted his face up toward her. "Promise?" Jolly swallowed hard. She wanted to promise the world, but all she had was the truth and the fragile hope that tomorrow might be kinder. "I promise, baby," she whispered. But deep down, Jolly knew promises didn't fill empty stomachs. They didn't shelter a pregnant woman from the cold, and they didn't erase the cruel stares and whispered slurs that came every single day. As the night grew colder, Jolly wrapped her arms around Malik, rocking him as the city hummed around them. Her mind drifted back to Terrence. She remembered his laughter, his arms, his steady voice that always said, "We'll get through anything together." Now she was alone, and together was just a memory. Yet even in the shadows of the sidewalk, even with nothing left, Jolly still carried something fierce inside her, the will to endure. The world had already stolen too much from her. Her husband, her home, her dignity. She would not let it take her child. That night, Jolly did not know that fate was already turning, that the same cruel city which spit on her would soon test. her heart in ways she never imagined. She could not know that her kindness, the one thing she had never let go, would soon change everything. And for the first time in weeks, as she drifted to sleep against the hard concrete, her unborn child shifting inside her, Jolly dreamed not of pain, but of light. The morning sun rose without mercy, spreading golden light across the skyscrapers and glass towers of downtown Atlanta. To the wealthy, it was a beautiful day filled with possibility. For Jolly, it was just another 24 hours of survival. Her back ached from sleeping on concrete, her legs swollen from pregnancy, but she forced herself to stand. Malik was still asleep on the cardboard, his small chest rising and falling slowly. She smoothed his curly hair with trembling fingers, whispering, "Time to wake up, baby. We gotta move before the police come." She had learned the rules of the streets quickly. Stay invisible. Don't let the cops catch you loitering. Don't anger the store owners whose sidewalks you sleep on. Don't beg too loudly, because then you're not just poor, you're a nuisance. Malik stirred, rubbing his eyes. "Mama, can we have breakfast today?" Her heart clenched. Breakfast, a simple word, yet one she hadn't been able to give him in days. She forced a smile, though inside her chest felt like it was splitting open. "We'll try, baby. We'll try." The city buzzed with life as they walked. Suits brushed past them, coffee cups in hand, earbuds in their ears. Expensive cars lined the streets, their engines humming softly, while Jolly and Malik moved silently like shadows no one wanted to acknowledge. At a bakery on the corner, the smell of warm bread wafted out, making Malik's stomach growl audibly. He pressed his nose to the glass, eyes wide at the golden croissants and glazed donuts lined neatly in rows. "Don't touch the glass, boy," barked a white man in a suit as he pushed past. "Your mama ought to teach you better manners." Jolly's lips tightened. She gently took Malik's hand, pulling him back. "Come on, baby. Don't mind him." But Malik's face burned with shame. At 7 years old, he was already learning the sting of being judged not just for his hunger, but for his very existence. They moved further down the street, and Jolly finally swallowed her pride enough to extend her hand toward a woman in a floral dress who was sipping a latte. "Excuse me, ma'am," she said softly. "Could you spare $1? My son hasn't eaten." The woman glanced at her, eyes narrowing, then shook her head with disgust. "I work hard for my money. Maybe you should try doing the same." Jolly wanted to scream. "I worked too. I cleaned houses, I washed dishes, I tried. But my husband died and I'm pregnant and I'm doing the best I can." But the words stayed trapped in her throat. Another passerby sneered, tossing over his shoulder. "Ain't no handouts here. You people always want something for free. You people." Two words that sliced deeper than any blade. Jolly's chest tightened, and Malik clutched her hand tighter, sensing her pain. By noon, the heat pressed down hard and their legs ached from walking. They found a shaded bench in a small park, where pigeons pecked at crumbs left behind by children. Malik tried to chase one down, giggling weakly, his laughter short-lived by the pangs of hunger that made him clutch his stomach. Jolly sat heavily on the bench, wiping sweat from her brow. Her body screamed for rest, but she knew she couldn't stop. A pregnant woman couldn't afford to faint on the street with no one to catch her. Suddenly, Malik tugged at her sleeve, his face brightening. Across the street, a church group was setting up tables, laying out trays of sandwiches and bottles of water. "Food, Mama!" Malik whispered with excitement. Hope surged through Jolly as she hurried him across the street. But when they approached the table, a volunteer, a middle-aged man with pale skin and cold eyes, stepped in front of them. "Sorry," he said flatly. "This food is for our congregation. Members only." Jolly's heart sank. "Please, sir. He's just a child. Just one sandwich." The man's lip curled. "If we fed every beggar, there'd be none left for the good folks. Move along." Malik's face fell, his small hands clutching his empty stomach. Jolly felt the tears sting her eyes, but she swallowed them back. Pride was useless here. Dignity was a luxury she couldn't afford. She turned away, guiding Malik gently by the shoulder. As they walked back toward the sidewalk, Malik whispered, "Why don't they like us, Mama?" Her throat closed. How could she explain centuries of hatred, of systemic racism, to a boy who just wanted a sandwich? How could she tell him that to many people? His skin color alone was enough to condemn him, She knelt slowly, ignoring the ache in her knees, and held his face in her hands. "It's not you, baby. It's not us. Some people's hearts are just small, but don't you ever believe you don't deserve better. You hear me?" Malik nodded, though his eyes still shimmered with confusion and hurt. The afternoon dragged on, hunger gnawing at them both. The little piece of bread Malik had saved from the night before was gone, and Jolly's body ached with weakness. Every kick from the unborn child inside her was both a blessing and a reminder. She was running out of time. As the sun dipped low in the sky, painting the city in orange and gold, Jolly and Malik sat once more on the edge of the sidewalk, exhaustion heavy in their bones. Cars passed in a blur of wealth and speed, their windows tinted, their drivers blind to the suffering inches away. And then, a sleek black luxury car slowed to a stop right in front of them. Its engine purred like a lion, polished chrome reflecting the dying light of the day. The driver was a man in his 40s, dressed sharply, his eyes sharp with focus. Beside him in the back seat, a little girl with long, curly hair pressed her nose against the glass. Her name was Catreen. She was 7 years old, just like Malik. And in that instant, two worlds stood only a few feet apart, one dripping with wealth and privilege, the other clinging to survival on the edge of despair. Fate had finally arrived. The black luxury car glided to a slow stop, just a few feet from where Jolly and Malik sat. Its tinted windows gleamed under the fading sunlight, its polished surface reflecting a world far removed from the hunger and despair of the sidewalk. Jolly lowered her eyes instinctively, pulling Malik closer. She knew cars like this. They belonged to men who looked through people like her as though they didn't exist. Inside the car, Jack Sullivan tapped his fingers impatiently against the steering wheel. He was a man used to control, used to the world bending when he spoke. Billionaire businessman, philanthropist when it suited him, ruthless negotiator in the boardroom, Jack believed in power. And in his mind, money was the greatest power of all. But right now, power had slipped from his hands. His daughter, Catreen, sat in the back seat whining, "Daddy, I'm hungry! Please, can we get something to eat? I don't want to wait till we get home." Jack sighed, his jaw tightening. They were supposed to be on their way to a dinner meeting, but traffic had been brutal. His daughter's voice, though filled with innocence, gnawed at him. "Sweetheart, just a little longer. We'll eat soon." "No!" she cried, pressing her hands against her stomach. "I'm starving!" Jack gritted his teeth and tried to start the engine again. The car sputtered, coughed, and then died completely. He frowned, twisting the key again and again. Nothing. A string of curses escaped under his breath. Damn it, not now! He stepped out of the car, his sharp black shoes hitting the pavement. Lifting the hood, he leaned over, inspecting the engine, though he knew little about cars beyond their price tags. His expensive watch gleamed in the dying light, the symbol of a man who had everything except control over this moment. Meanwhile, Catreen sat in the back, pouting. Her big brown eyes scanned the street. That's when she saw them. A boy about her age, with curly hair and clothes that looked too small for him, holding something in his hand. A piece of bread wrapped carefully in a napkin. Malik noticed her, too. He had watched her press her hands against her stomach, heard her cry that she was hungry. Something inside him shifted. He knew that feeling. The ache in the belly, the emptiness that made your head dizzy. He glanced at his mother, then down at the bread he had saved for himself. "Go on, eat, baby," Jolly whispered. Her voice was weak but firm. Malik shook his head. Instead, he stood slowly, his knees wobbly from exhaustion. Clutching the bread, he walked toward the car. His steps were small, cautious, as though approaching something forbidden. Catreen's eyes lit up when he extended the bread toward her. For a moment, there was silence. Two children from two opposite worlds staring at each other. The sidewalk and the luxury, car bridging a gap that adults had spent centuries widening. "Here," Malik said softly, his voice barely above a whisper. "You can have it." Catreen's face broke into a wide smile. "Thank you," she chirped, snatching the bread with both hands. She didn't hesitate. She ate it quickly, crumbs falling onto her dress. From under the car hood, Jack muttered, "Catreen, what are you eating?" "Bread," she answered with joy, her mouth full. Jack straightened, confusion flashing across his face. He had been so busy with the engine he hadn't seen where it had come from. He glanced inside the car, frowning. "Where did you get that?" Catreen wiped her mouth with the back of her hand. "A boy gave it to me. He was really nice. He said I could have it." Jack's brows knit together. "A boy?" He turned, scanning the street. But by then, Malik had retreated back to Jolly's side. Jolly, with her belly heavy and her eyes weary, had lowered her gaze once more, hoping to stay invisible. The mechanic finally arrived, his truck pulling up behind Jack's car. "Looks like your battery's shot, sir," he said, already pulling out tools. Jack nodded briskly, distracted. His daughter had food in her hands, food she shouldn't have had. Not from a stranger, and yet, the sight of her smiling, her hunger momentarily eased, tugged strangely at his chest. As the mechanic worked, Catreen leaned closer to her father. "Daddy, the boy was so sweet. He didn't have much, but he gave me his food. Isn't that nice?" Jack's jaw tightened. Something about her words hit him like a punch. A memory flashed in his mind. A hotel entrance, a week ago. A woman, dark-skinned and pregnant, had approached him with pleading eyes, asking for something to eat. He remembered the way he had scowled, how he had shoved her away with disgust, muttering about scammers and leeches. He had told her to get lost, his voice sharp enough to cut. And now, could it be? Was this the same woman? Was that boy her son? Jack turned slightly, and his eyes fell on Jolly. She sat quietly, her arm wrapped protectively around Malik, her head bowed. The memory of that night struck him harder now, the humiliation he had delivered to her, the cruelty he hadn't thought twice about. Yet here she was, still giving from nothing, giving while starving. She had nothing left, and she had still taught her son to share. Jack felt something shift in his chest, something he couldn't explain. The mechanic closed the hood with a thud. "All set. You're good to go." Jack nodded absent-mindedly, slipping a crisp bill into the man's hand. But his mind was elsewhere. He couldn't stop staring at the pregnant woman and her boy, sitting silently on the edge of the sidewalk as though they were invisible. As he slid back into the car, his hands tightened on the wheel. His daughter leaned against him, smiling contentedly. "Daddy," she said softly, "they were nice. Can we help them?" Jack swallowed hard. He didn't answer right away, but in his chest, guilt and realization were colliding with something he had long buried, the ability to care. The engine purred smoothly again as Jack turned the key, but his mind was anything but steady. He stared out at the road ahead, the city lights blinking alive as night approached. His daughter sat in the back, humming softly, satisfied after the small piece of bread Malik had given her. Yet Jack couldn't shake the image. That boy's thin arms, that woman's tired dark eyes, the memory of his own hand pushing her away outside that hotel, his voice like a blade. "Get lost! Don't beg from me!" He had thought nothing of it then. To him, she had been just another nameless face on the streets, one of those people. He told himself they were lazy, that they lived on handouts, that they deserved the life they had. It was easier to believe that than to admit that the world had stacked itself cruelly against some. But now, that woman had given him a lesson he hadn't asked for. With nothing in her pockets, she still had the strength to raise a son, who would give his last piece of bread to a stranger. "Daddy," Catreen's small voice broke through his thoughts. "Can we help them? Please? They were so nice. The boy looked hungry too." Jack gripped the wheel tighter. He wanted to say no, to dismiss it. His life was built on hard lines and tough choices. Charity, when he gave it, was always through foundations, through photo ops and tax deductions, never through personal acts of kindness. But the guilt gnawed deeper with every passing second. His daughter tugged at his sleeve again. "Please, Daddy? You always tell me we should be kind. You always say family takes care of each other. What if they're our family now?" The words pierced him. Out of the mouths of children came truths adults spent their whole lives avoiding. Jack's chest rose with a heavy sigh. He glanced at his daughter through the rear-view mirror, then at the road ahead. For the first time in a long while, he let his heart decide. He turned the steering wheel sharply, guiding the car back toward the curb where Jolly and Malik sat. Jolly looked up, startled, as the luxury car rolled to a stop in front of them again. She immediately tensed, pulling Malik closer, ready for more insults. Her pride had been trampled too many times. Her dignity had become her last fragile shield. Jack stepped out of the car, his polished shoes clicking against the pavement. He hesitated for a moment, a billionaire unsure of his own voice. Finally, he spoke. "Excuse me," he said quietly. Jolly's eyes narrowed. Her hand rested protectively over her belly. "What do you want?" Jack swallowed, his throat tight. The words didn't come easily. He had spent his life towering over others, commanding boardrooms, winning battles. Apologizing was foreign to him. Yet here, before this woman who had nothing, he felt small. I owe you an apology," he said at last. His voice wavered. "A week ago outside the Marriott Hotel, I didn't treat you like a human being. I pushed you away. I humiliated you, and now I see you gave my daughter something you didn't even have to give. Something I couldn't give her in that moment." Jolly stared at him, her expression unreadable. The street lamp cast shadows across her face, highlighting the exhaustion etched into her skin. "You're right," she said flatly. "You didn't treat me like a human being. None of you do." Her words hit him like a slap. He nodded, lowering his gaze. For once, the man who built skyscrapers and controlled empires couldn't look another person in the eye. "I don't have excuses," Jack said, his voice rough. "I only know that I was wrong. And I don't want to walk away knowing I left you here like this. Please, let me help you." Jolly almost laughed, bitter, sharp. "Help! You think you can fix this with money? With your guilt?" Jack shook his head slowly. "No, not money. At least, not just money. I don't know how to fix what I did. I don't know how to fix the world. But I can try to fix what's in front of me. You, your son." He paused, his eyes softening. "Your family." Malik peeked out from behind his mother's arm. His wide eyes locked on the man who seemed so different now than he had a week ago. "Mama," he whispered. "It's the man from the hotel." Jolly's heart twisted. She remembered that night vividly, the sting of rejection, the way she had walked away with tears burning her cheeks. And now here he stood, powerful and polished, asking for forgiveness. She wanted to hate him. She wanted to spit back every insult she had ever heard on these streets. But then she felt the gentle kick of the child inside her, reminding her that bitterness couldn't fill empty stomachs. Anger couldn't shield her son at night. Her voice trembled. "Why now? Why come back?" Jack glanced at his daughter, who was leaning out of the car window with wide, innocent eyes. "Because she reminded me of something I forgot," he said softly. "That kindness isn't weakness. That it takes strength to give when you have nothing. Your son taught her that today. And you've lived it!" The silence between them was heavy, filled with years of pain, centuries of injustice. Jolly didn't answer right away. But the look in her eyes, a mix of suspicion, exhaustion, and the faintest spark of hope, was enough. Jack took a step closer, his voice low. "Please, come with me. You don't have to live like this anymore. Let me do for you what I should have done the first time we met. Let me see you as human." Jolly exhaled shakily, her arms tightening around Malik. Her dignity screamed at her to refuse, to prove she could survive without anyone's pity. But her son's hollow cheeks, his tired body, her unborn child's movements, they whispered louder. For the first time in weeks, she considered saying yes. The night air had cooled, and the city lights shimmered like jewels scattered across the dark horizon. Jolly stood frozen on the sidewalk, her hand resting on Malik's shoulder, her other hand gripping the curve of her pregnant belly. Jack's offer lingered in the air, heavy and terrifying. For a long moment, she didn't move. Pride screamed at her to stay rooted to the concrete, to refuse, to prove that she didn't need anyone, especially not the same man, who had once shoved her aside like trash. But then she looked down. Malik's small hand clung to hers, his eyes wide, his face pale with exhaustion. His ribs showed faintly beneath his shirt. His lips were dry. And inside her, the baby kicked again, as if urging her to choose life, not stubbornness. Slowly, painfully, she exhaled. "All right," she whispered, her voice almost inaudible. "We'll go with you. But not because I trust you, only because my children deserve better than this street." Jack nodded, his throat tightening. He didn't expect forgiveness. He didn't deserve it. But he felt relief wash over him as he opened the back door of his car. "Please," he said softly. "Get in." Jolly hesitated. The leather seats looked too clean, too rich. too far removed from the cardboard bed she and Malik had been sleeping on. She felt dirty, like her very presence might stain the car. Her legs trembled as she guided Malik inside first. Malik's eyes widened as he slid onto the seat. He had never sat in anything so soft, so luxurious. His fingers trailed over the stitching like he was touching gold. Catreen's face lit up when she saw him. "You came!" she exclaimed, scooting closer. "I'm so glad." "I wanted to thank you properly. You gave me your food when you didn't even have enough. That was the nicest thing anyone's ever done for me." Malik blushed faintly, ducking his head. "It wasn't much," he whispered, "but I didn't want you to be hungry." Catreen grinned. "Well, now we're friends. Best friends." The innocence of her declaration made Jolly's chest ache. Children didn't care about skin color, about wealth, about the walls adults built. To them, kindness was enough. Finally, Jolly lowered herself into the car. The seat swallowed her, cradling her sore back and aching legs in a way the cold pavement never could. For the first time in weeks, her body didn't scream in pain just from sitting. But her mind was a storm. She sat stiffly, her hands folded protectively over her stomach, her eyes darting to Jack in the driver's seat. He glanced at her through the rearview mirror, then quickly looked away. He could see her tension, her suspicion. He could feel the distance between them, wider than any highway. "Where are we going?" Jolly asked sharply, her voice laced with caution. Jack cleared his throat. I have a house not far from here. You'll be safe there. You can eat, rest, just for tonight. No obligations. No tricks, I promise." Jolly's eyes narrowed. She wanted to believe him, but years of rejection, of cruelty, of being treated as less than, made belief dangerous. She didn't answer. She simply stared out the window as the city lights blurred past. Inside the car, silence thickened until Catreen spoke again, breaking it with her childish honesty. "Mama always tells me that when we have a lot, we should share. I think God wanted me to meet Malik so I could learn that even when you have nothing, you can still share." Jolly's eyes stung with sudden tears. She blinked hard, swallowing the lump in her throat. Malik leaned shyly against the door, his cheeks flushing at the praise. Jack listened quietly, his hands gripping the steering wheel tighter. His daughter's words mirrored his own guilt. Here was a pregnant black woman, mocked and despised on the street, who had still raised a child capable of kindness greater than his own. Finally, he broke the silence. "Jolly," he said softly, testing her name for the first time. "I can't undo what I did to you, or what this world has done. But if you'll let me, I'd like to give your children what they deserve. Safety, food, a chance." Jolly's lips pressed into a thin line. She looked down at Malik, whose head had slowly rested against her side. He was already drifting to sleep, safe in a way he hadn't been in months. She whispered almost to herself, "Don't make promises you can't keep. My life has been full of broken ones." Jack's chest tightened. He wanted to tell her this was different, that he wouldn't let her down. But he knew words were cheap. Only actions would matter now. As the car turned off the main road toward the quiet, gated neighborhood where Jack lived, Jolly stared at the tall iron gates rising in the distance. They looked less like safety and more like a cage, and in that moment she realized something terrifying. She had just crossed a line. From the known misery of the sidewalk into the unknown, future of a billionaire's world. Her heart pounded. Would this be salvation? Or another betrayal? The iron gates opened slowly, groaning as they revealed a world Jolly had only ever seen from a distance. Manicured lawns stretched wide, trimmed bushes shaped perfectly, fountains glittering under the moonlight. The houses were not homes, they were palaces. Jolly sat rigid in the back seat, Malik asleep with his head in her lap, Catreen chattering softly about her room, her toys the size of the kitchen. To Jolly, it felt like stepping into a dream she had no right to enter. Her dress was torn, her shoes worn thin, her skin dry from sleeping on concrete. She imagined every neighbor here would see her as an intruder, a stain on their perfect neighborhood. The car stopped in front of a massive house with white pillars and wide steps. Jack cut the engine and turned toward her. "You're safe now," he said quietly. Jolly's throat tightened. The words were simple, but they pierced her. Safe. A word she hadn't felt in months. Still, she hesitated. "Why are you doing this?" she whispered. People like you don't see people like me. You don't stop, you don't care. Jack looked at her, his face stripped of arrogance, stripped of wealth. Just a man, bare and guilty. Because I was wrong, he admitted. Because I forgot what it meant to be human. And because your son reminded me, he reminded me of something I lost a long time ago. Compassion. Jolly stared at him for a long time, searching for the lie, for the trick. But all she saw was a father who, for the first time, looked humble. Jack opened the door and stepped out, then gently lifted Malik from her lap. The boy stirred but didn't wake, his small body limp with exhaustion. Jack cradled him as if he were his own son, careful and protective. Something cracked inside Jolly then, a piece of her wall breaking. For the first time since Terrence's death, she allowed herself to believe that maybe, just maybe, there was still kindness left in this world. Inside the house, warmth enveloped her. Soft lights, the smell of food drifting from the kitchen, the hum of safety. Catreen dragged her mother's hand eagerly. Mama! Mama, can they stay in my room tonight, please? Malik can sleep in my bed and I'll take the floor. Jack smiled faintly at his daughter's excitement. We'll figure it out, sweetheart. Let's get them something to eat first. The kitchen table was already being set by staff, but Jack waved them away. He didn't want servants, cameras, or pity to define this moment. He wanted it to be personal. He placed sandwiches, fruit, and warm milk on the table himself, then stepped back. Jolly sat slowly, her hands trembling. Malik finally woke, his eyes widening at the sight of food piled high. Mama, he whispered, is this all for us? Her lips trembled as she nodded. Yes, baby, eat. Malik reached for a sandwich, and for the first time in weeks, Jolly saw him smile. She picked up an apple, biting into it, tears slipping silently down her cheeks. Jack watched, his chest heavy with emotion. This wasn't charity. This wasn't a transaction. This was redemption. Later that night, when Malik and Catreen lay side by side on the bed, whispering and giggling like children should, Jolly stood by the window of the guest room. Her hand rested on her belly, feeling the baby stir. She whispered to the life inside her, maybe the world isn't all cruel. Maybe there's still hope. Jack appeared at the doorway, his face tired but gentle. You don't have to decide anything tonight, he said softly. But I want you to know, you're not alone anymore. Not if you don't want to be. Jolly turned, her eyes shimmering with cautious hope. For the first time in months, her shoulders eased, the weight of despair lifting just slightly. She nodded slowly. I don't know what tomorrow looks like. But tonight my son is safe. And that's more than I ever thought I'd have again. Jack smiled faintly. Then we'll start with tonight. And tomorrow we'll build more. The silence that followed wasn't heavy this time. It was soft, healing. Outside, the city roared on, its streets still filled with cruelty, with hunger, with racism that chewed lives apart. But inside this house, on this night, something different had taken root. A pregnant black woman who had been pushed aside. A little boy who gave away his last piece of bread. A billionaire who rediscovered his humanity. And a little girl whose innocence had tied them all together. They weren't just strangers anymore. They were something more. They were a family.